Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel, wishing you a happy and healthy start to this macro Sunday morning as we continue on with the macro thread here, looking at very high term timeframes. The lowest time frame we'll look at today is actually the 12-hour, and it'll be at the very end of this video as well. Other than that, big focus on the month of June actually. So what's kind of most relevant for this next 30-day period or so, leading into the, well, I guess the heart of summer. Anyways, other than that, I want to once again let you know that the current sale is going on as I go to my chart pane over here for just one more day. It's actually the last day and then never again. No, of course, just kidding. Don't, as always, rush into any one of the programs or products. Please do watch the promotional videos that accompany them. They're explaining who they're for, who they're not for. They're probably going to answer most questions that you might have about them. And I think, yeah, that's a good place to just jump right into it. All right, first things first, let's start off with a little bit on the newer side, which is the weekly time frame right here. The weekly time frame is in the process of doing some rather important on the weekly. It's a little bit redundant right there, but you get my point. And what essentially we're looking at? Well, what I'm referencing here is I'm referencing that green moving average and the yellow moving average. That's the 55 and the 21 respectively, or maybe I better say the yellow and the green, which is the 21 and the 55, meaning that in this case, we're going to potentially see a cross to the upside of the lower period above the higher period. That would be the yellow above the green, the 21 above the 55. And if that does indeed happen, that would be a silver cross. And throughout the full history of Bitcoin, if we go ahead and look at the prior times that we've actually seen that happen, I'll actually mark them off with these vertical lines because my red circles aren't showing up all that well. So in this case, we have 2, 3, and 4 over here. We can see that long term, this has been pretty damn big for Bitcoin, leading into all of the major macro rallies actually, even leading into a pretty impressive rally coming off of the 2018-2019 lows over here. Did ultimately fail into the Rona dump, obviously, but even then, from that cross given on price action, there was almost 100% move to the upside, which is rather interesting. And obviously all the prior ones, or just all the other ones, as there have been, 3, and one was after, have led to, multiples of 100% actually. So rather big right there. And of course, it is not happening just yet actually. But the reason why I bring it up is because Bitcoin teeter-tottering around that green moving average, which is the higher period, the 55, does imply that as long as Bitcoin is above it, it is inevitable. It is inevitable that we will see that cross happen. And if that does happen, well, based off the history, I would be looking for a continuation of this rally, very likely in the month of June, maybe July. June might just be kind of like sideways within this current range between like basically 26 low and about 30,000 high, but very likely leading into an extension of this rally if that happens. That does imply if Bitcoin starts to lose this region right here, which is officially basically like low 26,000 bucks on a weekly time frame, then crisis not averted for the laws, and Bitcoin very likely does play out that major downside move that I think many people are still looking for right here. But as long as Bitcoin is above that pivot, it is difficult from this perspective kind of see something like that happening. But that would be the first sort of major warning flag that I would say that, hey, if that happens, Bitcoin coming down very likely, and probably very hard as well. Until then, continuing to close above that pivot at low 26,000 bucks on higher term timeframes is a good sign for the laws. Sideways will favor the laws here, and I suspect that, how long could this take? If Bitcoin were to really just go sideways within this current region that we're looking at for about 3 weeks, it would inevitably cross the upside. We can also forecast for this current closure, which is probably gonna be pretty fucking unlikely. But let's see, where's my 21 and 55? Oh, actually, I do have it right there. Actually, it would cross the upside if Bitcoin closed above 33,229 today. That number would get updated tomorrow, obviously, as we'll have a new weekly. But as you can see right here, one thing before the next. And again, within about 3 weeks, even if Bitcoin were to just literally stay exactly where it is at right now, it would very likely force that cross to the upside. Anyways, moving to the next thing on the topic of June, I did want to once again go back to this June monthly analysis where I've looked at every prior June in Bitcoin's history here. They're all marked off with these green vertical bars, and found that out of a total of 13 Junes, 8 of those did close with some decent upside actually. In this case, I already have it marked off over here, but we can go into some more granular details of this as I have done some more research on it. And as we can see, out of a total of 13, 8 of those did close with upside, giving it about a 61.5% strike rate for just general upside. So that's actually better than what we saw in May. If you remember when we were looking at the May analysis, which the whole simple, like colloquial saying of sell in May and walk away, it's kind of bullshit actually when you look at it, because it's closer to 50-50 than this was actually, if memory serves me correctly. June would be more upside, obviously, but my point is that when we're talking about seasonality, the May sort of moniker, when you actually put it to the test, it doesn't really hold up. And when you look at June, it's better than 50% probability. I mean, what was also interesting about this is that the past 3 Junes have actually been all closing to the downside. In fact, the worst one, the biggest loss that we've ever seen in June happened on the last June in 2022. Obviously, that was coming off of like one of the collapses that we saw last year. One of those fucking massive bullets that hopefully most people dodged, which was either FTX or Luna, or I think it was Luna on that one actually. But yeah, that was actually the worst one last year. And we've seen as we've had 3 consecutive June closures, at a loss, that is the first time we've actually ever seen that happen for the month of June in the entirety of Bitcoin's history. Anyways, when we're talking about a 61.5% strike rate, that's obviously not 100% strike rate, like very far from it actually. So it is important to also study the losers on this case as well. And we can see that for the losers, the average return, the average loss for those months was about 17%. On the other side, for the gains, for the winning side, just around about 26.75%, as you can see right here. Standard deviation was what? I actually did not go ahead and go through with that. So all this information right here is not relevant. I should just get rid of that right now. In fact, because that is, I did not do the calculations on that. That was left over from a different one. Anyways, in this case, yes, you can see that would be rather significant. And when we go back into the data over here, let's just say Bitcoin does play at the upside, and it does go for the average or somewhere around the average, like maybe 20% from the open. Where would that put Bitcoin? That would put Bitcoin like $33,000. By the same token, to the downside, let's see, 17%. Let's see what that would look like to the downside right here from that open, and to the downside, that'd put Bitcoin, about $22,500. Personally speaking, I do think that if Bitcoin breaks down from here, it probably reaches a little bit lower, maybe closer to $21,000. But for right now, more things kind of still pointing to the upside. If I had to make a general call for June, probably try some upside. If you put a gun on my head. Anyways, moving on to the next chart, also kind of on the topic of June as well, would be going back to this fundamentals or this chart of the halving over here, of which you can see that all of these green vertical bars represent prior halvings, like the actual halving data itself. We have this next presumed one over here in about a year from now, May 20th, around there of 2024. Again, these are kind of estimates because, we don't really know the exact date until we get a little bit closer to it, but it's close enough, right? Anyways, my point is that, or what I want to present here is that anytime that we have seen these parabolic runs in Bitcoin's history, and it actually ends that parabolic run, it typically goes into this long-term downtrend. And once it actually breaks that long-term downtrend on the weekly, that has seemingly happened about a year before the halving itself. So you can go back to this first one in 2011 and 2012. Here's the halving itself, and you can see that once it actually broke that long-term downtrend, that was literally 52 weeks before the halving itself. 1 year exactly. You can also see that that sort of this I don't know what I'd refer to this as. It's not necessarily like mid-cycle, but this portion of the cycle, if you will, after breaking that long-term downtrend in between there and the actual halving date itself, typically has an initial rally somewhere between the 0.5 and the 618, as you'll likely notice over here. That first move up you can see right there. Anyway, same thing over here in 2014, 2015, long-term downtrend, breaks it over here, 54 weeks before the halving itself. So a little bit longer than that first one, but still kind of on par with it, I would say. And again, that first major move to the upside followed by a pretty vicious pullback. Doesn't look like much here, but that is a 35 or 40% pullback crash. Again, rallying up to that 618 or somewhere between that 0.5 and 618. As you can see, same thing over here in 2018, 2019, long-term downtrend broken 58 weeks before. Again, so we have 52, 54, 58, so 2, 4. And then over here, it'll be 8 actually. So multiplying by 2. Interesting. Anyways, this one again goes on a pretty phenomenal run, and then a pretty phenomenal crash right after that. And we'll actually look at the data on that soon enough here too. Anyways, seemingly the same thing happening over here for this particular cycle. About 66 weeks before the presumed halving date, we do have that breakout. And so far, Bitcoin's gone on a decent run. It's not necessarily comparable to prior runs that we've seen. In this case, we've seen about 38.5% move to the upside. Compare that with this one over here, which was like multiple hundreds of percent. Yeah, that was like 230% move to the upside. This one over here was like 100% move to the upside. This one over here, another 150% move to the upside or so. And we can actually go look into some more granular details on this, which we can go over here. Yes, indeed. And we could see that, on that first major rally, so after that long-term downturn breaks, from that point to the next major high, we've seen an average gain of about 140%. In fact, 155, 102, and 167 respectively, if I can actually get into the details right there. Again, this is not that much data to be going off of, to be fair, but it is interesting, at least I hope it is, on a boring Sunday, on a boring fucking Sunday. What was also interesting about this, and what I really want to focus on here, is the amount of days that it took to get to the next major high, which on average was 100 days. Now, you will notice, if you go into the details, the first one was only took 42 days. The next two were 133 and 126 respectively, so significantly more. Again, not enough data here to really make any like strong conclusions, but if we really had to, talk about it, then I would say that probably closer to like 130-ish region is probably where we're looking at. But going back into it over here, if we look at our current, the current cycle, if you will, well, from the breakout to where Bitcoin is currently at has been about, this will be day number 105. So it will officially be above the average. Now, again, I would say that with that first one being an outlier, going like another 30 days or so, wouldn't be so far out of the question, certainly. I mean, it's definitely happened before. And if we go back into it right here, well, we can see that that would essentially be the month of June, meaning that if we were to be looking at this, as at this data as relevant, that basically takes us into the last week of June. We would be expecting this current run to continue throughout this month, and then probably find a major pullback after that, actually. Pretty nasty, man. Pretty nasty fucking crash, right? Because after that, the average loss coming off that next high was about over 40%, actually. Two of those readings being about the upper 30s, one of them being the most recent one, the Rona dump at 50, almost 53%. So again, looking at it right there, it's like, does Bitcoin continue this run throughout the month of June? Well, based off the seasonality, based off the timing of the halving, and based off maybe a few other things that we look at as well, this would be the month for it, maybe a little bit into July as well if things get really, really crazy. But after that, we're probably looking at like a late summer major move to the downside. Maybe even probably at least 30%, maybe even like more than 40%, which really depends on how high Bitcoin gets first. If it were to put in the high right here, obviously 30% to the downside would put Bitcoin at $21,000. So I still think that would, still be rather relevant. But of course, if Bitcoin were to trudge its way up into the deeper 30,000s first, I'm going to play around with the numbers here. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but if it were to get to like $38,000 and then play out about a 30 to 40% pullback, well, 30% would put you basically back where Bitcoin is at right now. 40% puts you basically $22,500. So, again, it's kind of difficult to do that next part before we get this first part, or at least confirmation of this first part. But I would say that if Bitcoin's going to continue this rally, very likely happens this month. And we'll even be looking at another thing that probably plays into that. In fact, actually, let's just get to it right now, because I think it does kind of help solidify this picture, and then we can get into some other more fringe things. But I'll go back over here to the 2-day time frame, the volatility versus stochastic momentum setup. I don't think that I need to explain this setup yet again, because I figure it's all the same people in this channel right now. We're all just fucking holding hands, waiting for the shit to pass, really. If you're sticking around during these times, then I salute you, because it takes a shit ton of perseverance and patience, really patience. Yeah. Anyways, so in this case, just to update, 2-day volatility, now officially at extreme lows. This is at 1.59 percentile, the lowest levels that we've seen before the phenomenal, massive, biblical rally that began, and beginning of this year in January, where Bitcoin went on that first move from like $17,000 to 22 or 23. On top of that, what is, and to be fair, this is not expanding volatility right here. This is still just in the background. It's a potential, it's something to be aware of, and it's inevitable that it will expand at some point. The question is, how long does it stay down here? Obviously I don't know, like there's no way for me to know that, but I would say that the longer that it stays down here, the more and more likely it is to explode from these regions. And seeing as we already kind of saw this one really come down hard, or contract hard, I should say, I do think that this one probably sets up for a pretty big explosion sometime around maybe mid-June. In other words, I think that it still has, another week to go, maybe. Could be in for some more boring sideways, to be honest with you, and that would be considered good for the BULAs. But as of right now, the 2-day time frame stochastic oscillator is still pointed to the north side, and will be remaining with the upside curvature as long as Bitcoin's closing above 26,300. So many things coming in around those low $26,000 numbers. If Bitcoin starts to go below there, that's at the point where it becomes very obvious that Bitcoin is going to break down significantly further. But in this case, still remaining to the upside with that as the pivot. And if Bitcoin can essentially just kind of grind it out sideways and up here, we will inevitably be seeing that volatility expand. And at that point, we can start to look at these statistics for the 2-day time frame as relevant, which I actually don't want to go through on that particular chart right now. Where the fuck is my chart? There it is. Yes. But I think I have it over here as well. Yeah, just tentatively speaking, probably looking at this is not correct, or is this correct? Sorry, no, that is not correct. Let me go over here to the 2-day time frame. Is this the right one? Yeah, it's the index. Okay, yeah, that is correct. About 27%. So still, what's within the cards for this month? 20% to the upside. It kind of depends where it starts to expand from officially, but that would be like $32,500 to the upside. Or sorry, that was 20%. We need to go closer to 27, which would be, more like $34,000, a little bit above $34,000 to the downside. Obviously, that would be closer to $22,000. And of course, the average days it takes once that starts to fire off is about 19. So still in for something like that. Again, kind of plays hand in hand with the other data that we looked at. That things are starting to really come together here, is what I'm trying to say. That's a picture that I'm essentially hoping to kind of transfer here, although at the end of the day, you should be making your decisions for yourself. But what the main message that I really want to be having is this next month, if you're going to see continuation, probably happens here. Probably looking at like a 20 to 30% move if it does continue. If it doesn't continue, well, then we get to talk about some other fun stuff, which we'll get to when the time does come. Other than that, because we did just close another monthly, and we are now into the month of June, which is going to be marking the midpoint of this year. We should start to focus a little bit more on the 6-month time frame, of which the 6-month time frame is in the process of potentially putting in hidden bullish divergence. It's already traded above the high of the prior one. Actually, any sort of a closure above 25,200 for the end of this month, basically marking the end of the 6-month period. And yes, I would be looking for that to be confirmed, and Bitcoin very likely at least tries a move towards the deep 30,000s. And if things get really crazy, then we could actually see mid 40, like $45,000 by end of year. I do think that would be possible if that were to happen. So somewhere between upper 38s, or like upper 30s to mid 40s, basically, if that does happen. Anyways, moving on to the next thing, 2-month stochastic oscillator, which is also going to be closing at the end of this month, is going to have a chance to cross the upside if Bitcoin closes above basically 26,900, currently about $150 above right now. So, it's all safe for the whole month. No, but just, be aware of that number as well. What else do we have? And then I think now we can go down to the lowest time frame that we'll look at today. Oh, here was, no, that we already went through this one. But we'll go down to the 12-hour time frame. If you're looking at 12-hour, or if you're looking at lower term time frame ranges, I think that this one gets it rather well. You can see the bottom side of the current 12-hour time frame range at about 26,000. 200, you know, kind of in alignment with these last few lows here. The average is currently coming in at 27.5 or 27.550. That does imply that a good early warning signal for seeing some, you know, extension to the upside would be a 12-hour closure above 27.550. And at that point, you know, I probably would be looking for Bitcoin to start to mount its next assault towards 29,000 bucks. Probably a bit of a pullback there, and then, well, I'd imagine all the other things would probably start to take over. But I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. It's been 20 minutes long already. Yeah, that's a good place. As always, wish you the best from this nice and not so summery day in Helsinki. With that said, take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.